It was the matchup we've all been waiting for. Two of the best teams in the league fighting it out for the chance to call themselves the 2024 NWSL champions. Welcome back to Busy Watching Women's Soccer. I'm Bridie O'Toole, here to break down the tactics behind the 2024 NWSL Championship final. Very soon into the match, Orlando showed us that they're not going to deviate from what made them successful all season. They want to play a transitional game and they want to get the ball to Banda. So Morehouse sends this long ball to Banda on her own. I love the negative touch there to get around Morgan. And you can see there's not much more that they need to their game. That's going to get them pretty close just on the long ball. From this, we could tell the ball was going to be in the air a lot, and I think that style of play suits Orlando much better. They have a lot of Brazilians, they're very comfortable on the volley and in the air, and it meant that for Spirit, this game became really about trying to get the ball out of the air and trying to control it. I think this created a lot of problems for the Spirit because they wanted to play a very defensive match. They didn't have the opportunity to take the ball out of the air and control it in their own half because they were so focused on denying service to Barbara Banda. So what this meant is a lot of these balls just ended up being wild clearances to no one and nowhere with no purpose because that was the best thing that they could do. I'm honestly not really sure what other option they had, but a lot of these clearances just looked weird and unnecessary and kind of panicky to me. The ball being in the air for most of this match worked out really well for the Pride, but I think something else that they were intentional about that worked out really well for them is they brought a lot of efficiency into their game. There's an expression in the sport, ball is the fastest player on the pitch, and Orlando demonstrated a very good understanding of that and used it to their advantage. Orlando haven't used a high press much this season, and there wasn't really any reason for them to change. So we can see here, Kingsbury's using this opportunity to kind of figure out the press. When are Orlando going to step up? What space do we have? But you can see, even when Marta kind of pinched in there a little bit, it wasn't like a big commitment for her to go. She's just kind of repositioning and being where she needs to be. So this made things difficult for the Spirit. I think they had to end up playing a lot of long balls that they didn't really want to play because they couldn't really find a way through Orlando's shape because they couldn't draw them out of position. So it worked out really nicely for Orlando. Even on offense, I thought Orlando were particularly efficient. I think we can see here how much Spirit are resetting, and I don't think anybody other than Angelina, number 15 for Orlando, is having to do too much movement to get into this position. It's just such a big draw, really pulls Spirit out of their space, out of their structure, and just gets them moving. And they did this again and again. Pride just became conductors of the orchestra. Look how much they have Hatch running, and then all of a sudden, look how much they have Morris running, and then they're going to get Kouassi running. It's super exhausting for the players, especially when they're not getting any possession out of all of that movement. And Marta kind of just looks like she's playing with people here, just running them sideways now, doing whatever she can to just exhaust the opposition, and she really hasn't gone all that far. What really got me about this strategy is even when the Spirit were able to win the ball back, the amount of work they were having to do for it was immense. Hirschfeld here has to cover a lot of ground at a very high intensity to make this happen. Then when they finally do win the ball back, you know, you've got all that excitement and nerves from moving so quickly on the press that things just do not connect well. Honestly, the clip that I think demonstrates this dynamic and efficiency the best came not even a minute into the match. Watch how Marta and Hirschfeld are matched up here. Hirschfeld is going to win the ball 3 times in this sequence, but she is working so much harder, and Spirit aren't really regaining possession of the ball. Marta is a veteran. She knows what she is doing, and she understands that if she plays an efficient game, she can play a better match over 90 minutes. I just thought it was so interesting and so telling that, you know, Marta doesn't even care that she loses this one because it really truly does not matter because the ball is still bouncing up in the air. And then when the Spirit finally do get a chance, you have Morris just running, Hatch running for nothing, absolutely nothing. So Orlando Pride had a fantastic plan there and really tired out the Spirit very quickly. All the running made this a very tough matchup for the Spirit, and I actually think before the goal, they had the better run of play. They were generating a ton of chances. I think the quality of those chances was low, and that probably comes from being exhausted. So how did Orlando manage to score first when the Spirit actually had more of the ball and more shots? I think Orlando problem solved faster. Spirit run a very high press that has been very effective for them, especially late in the season. We've seen them poach a couple goals just off goalkeeper distribution alone because of that high press. Here's a look at what it looks like from Morehouse's perspective, and you can see if you want to put this ball on the ground, it just looks like there's nowhere to go. Because of that, the ball has to go wide, and this is exactly what the Spirit want. This is where they've been very successful, pushing people into corners with a lot of intensity. But again, you can just see the kind of intensity it's taking for them to win the ball. It's a lot of work for choppiness. Something that took me a little bit longer to put together, Spirit had, I think, 26 shots, which sounds like a lot, but I would argue 80 to 90% of them were kind of junk shots. But what it did do is it forced 18 goal kicks for Morehouse, which is an astronomical amount. So I do think that was probably part of the plan, knowing that Spirit are very good at fighting and creating goals off the goalkeeper distribution. I love this overhead shot because it gives you a really clear look at how the Spirit are trying to push up and push heavily on the goalkeeper during their distribution. There is, though, a little pocket of space, and I think Orlando did a very good job at recognizing that and adjusting. The space was in between Spirit's attacking and defensive part of their midfield lines, and I have to say Morehouse had fantastic long distribution. It was almost at 80%, just phenomenal. So she was a huge part of the distribution for this match. 35 minutes into the match, and Pride have figured out where the holes are in the Spirit structure. So as soon as they win this ball back, they're going to start doing what we saw earlier, which is create inefficiencies in the Spirit's movement. So play the ball back, start getting the Spirit running, start pulling the Spirit back. And Angelina has done a very good job at finding that space. And I think the other thing she's doing really nicely is leaving another pocket of space for herself. She's very aware of what she's doing. What Sams does here is incredibly important. Really finalizes that pulling Washington out of position. Morris is high, Kouassi is high, Kruger's even gotten fairly high now. Angelina in that pocket of space that she left for herself. People want to talk about the refereeing, so we'll come back to that in a little bit. And then we just get the magic that is Barbara Banda doing the same thing she's done all season to great effect. I do want to take a minute to talk about the finish because I think there's so much more to this than just Barbara Banda being fast and strong. I think she has a great understanding of human psychology and brings a lot of deception into her game. For me, this is all about taking advantage of the fact that the goalie would not be expecting a near side finish. Every single touch Banda takes is on her right foot here, even with the cut, up until she switches to her left foot, which would typically open you up more to shoot far post. It's also just a quick shot. Kingsbury has zero time to react, and it ends up being literally within inches of her foot. It's the definition of unlucky for Kingsbury, but Banda does everything to create her own luck. Now, back to the controversy with Angelina. I don't think anybody wants to argue that this was a foul. It's a two-hand shove, and one of them gets Santos in the face. I actually think the center ref is in pretty good position for this foul, but she can't call something she can't see, and because of that, she's looking to her assistant referee to make a call. I think people are often quite quick to criticize a center referee, but referees work as part of a crew, and much like players, they want to have chemistry within that team. Chemistry is huge, and this assistant referee has only worked 3 NWSL matches before this, none of which were in the playoffs, which doesn't give the crew a lot of time to gel. I also think he just kind of looked a little panicked, kind of anticipating that Banda was going to get ahead of him, and this was just a bad call to me that made no sense in terms of including someone on a crew without the necessary experience and chemistry. That being said, one of my favorite sports expressions that I've ever heard came from an NHL player who told me, you have to beat the opposition and you have to beat the referees. Nobody is out there to win the game for you. It's up to you to do that. And if you can tell 5 minutes into a game that the refereeing is going to be awful, that is just a factor that you have to work with. So it's unfortunate for the Spirit, but everybody deals with it at some point in time. Okay, back to regularly scheduled programming. Why then did the Spirit not make a comeback? How did the Orlando Pride keep this game at 1-0 for so long? For me, I think this had a lot to do with lack of adjustments from the Spirit, and I think they couldn't do a lot because they don't have a lot of depth. You know, they're missing Sarr, they're missing Sullivan, they're missing Bethune, so we know that they limped into this playoffs, but they really don't have a lot of experienced players available to come on. The first change for the Spirit was taking Mateo out of the right back position. I don't think on offense she looked fantastic. She looked like she was lacking a little bit of intensity, and you can see Rodman is here upset at her for not understanding where she's supposed to be. I think Mateo was in because of her speed. She has played 1,000 minutes to Carl's 2,000 minutes. So Carl has way more experience. I would have expected to see her starting there, but Mateo is very fast, and I think Geraldes felt like he needed that speed in covering Banda. So Carl comes on at the 60th minute, and I actually think she made a very big difference. I think it was a good improvement. She just looked more willing to drive in centrally, and Washington were getting themselves really, really stuck in the wide areas. So this was a nice change. Even if it's not successful, I just liked seeing that there's a bit more momentum going forwards. She was able to combine and create with her teammates better, and you could just see that chemistry of playing twice as much. She just looked twice as good offensively. I understand why Mateer was in, but I think Carl just offered them something offensive that they really needed. Problem is, that is really the best sub Spirit had available, and Pride had really, really high quality substitutes. They were able to take out Adriana for Yates, Watt for Doyle, Abello for Pickett, and Angelina for Cotrat. I really hope I pronounced that right. But to me, that's 3 players that would be starting on any other NWSL team, and a lot of them have been starters for Orlando throughout the season with significant minutes. So this was just not a fair fight when it came to substitutions. The one substitution that I was begging for was taking off Ashley Hatch for Brittany Ratcliffe. I think Brittany Ratcliffe looked fantastic throughout the season in this role where she would come in for just 15, 20 minutes and just amp up the energy. And I just really wish it had happened. I say that because I've caught quite a few moments over the past few weeks where it seems like Hatch is being told what to do by her teammates because she's not really listening to instructions. That one there, we can see Rodman getting frustrated with her. I think a lot of the time when Hatch was able to get the ball under control, she just looked really unsure of herself, not really confident, lost, scared. It just kind of seems to ignore what teammates are telling her. Also got really frustrated because Hatch got a lot of headers, and this was probably the better one of them, but even with it hitting the post, the technique is still bad. She's first to the ball because she's catching the ball as she's jumping up, not as she's coming down. So that's why the ball goes high. And you can kind of see in this one that Kruger was probably in a better position for that header. This one here is the exact same thing. She's first to the ball because her timing is off. And I think McCune honestly had the better opportunity there. If you look at the body language between them, McCune just looks annoyed and like that, you know, she probably called for that one. But the one that was most egregious for me is actually a header that Hatch didn't even get onto that came incredibly late in the game and probably could have been a game-tying opportunity 98 minutes into the match. Have a look at where Hatch is and have a look at where Kingsbury is. Hatch is going to leave her position, come and try take the ball off Kingsbury for whatever reason. I don't understand that at all. But if you actually look at where Kingsbury's header went, I think it is exactly the position Hatch would have been in if she hadn't tried to take the ball off Kingsbury. It's just absolutely inexplicable. To me, this just looked like a selfish player, and I've mumbled this to myself when watching on TV the past few matches, but I'm going to say it out loud now. I actually think an Ashley Hatch red card would have been beneficial to the Spirit just to get her off the field. It's probably not a very popular opinion, so you are more than welcome to come at me for that. I really don't enjoy being so negative about players because this is a job for them. It's very difficult. It's very easy to play armchair quarterback. So I want to take a moment to just reframe to something more positive. And I want to talk about my top 3 players for each team. First standout for me on Orlando was Allie Watt. I think she just did such excellent defensive work. She was up and down the pitch all day. She was working really hard and she was just calm, you know? She just looked strong. She had a great read on things, and it's like this play was it perfectly. She doesn't always win everything cleanly. It's not always easy, but she just gets up and keeps going, and the persistence, my goodness, I just think she had a fantastic game. I think she had this really like dynamic element on defense. I don't think she did much offensive work, honestly. I think it was a lot of defense, but she did a really great job. She's a really big part of this matchup for Orlando. Angelina is another player I thought did really well. Her passing was just fantastic, whether it was the short passes, wherever it was the long passes, on the ground, in the air. She just did it all. The assist was, of course, one of the best passes of the match. But I think she just looked good on defense as well. She has a really good understanding of, you know, when to keep her mark, when to drop her mark, where she needs to be. She did a lot of defensive work, and I think it was kind of a theme is that, you know, Orlando's midfield and attacking players that were able to do a ton of defensive work, that is what cemented the win for them. And then the woman herself, Morehouse, she didn't have to do a ton of work, but when it did come up, she was there. This one was a great save on Kouassi, good, quick reaction save in tight. She just kept doing what she's been doing all season, which is denying crosses in, on the ground, and in the air. She looked really strong, really confident whenever she was asked to handle the ball. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but almost 80% of the goal kicks, and I would assume the punts as well, were balls that were kicked more than 40 yards. Morehouse was very accurate on the distribution for these, and this was not really something the Pride did during the season, so it was a little bit of a game changer bringing it out for the final. I did do a video breaking down the Pride's tactics and players in detail a little bit earlier in the season, so if you want to see more from players like Banda, Yates, Abello. It was such a fantastic squad, and it's just a good video explaining how it all came together. Content is great. Presentation is not my best. I was wearing a shirt I shouldn't have worn, but I promise, I promise the actual player footage is good footage. On the Spirit side of the house, the first player that stood out to me is Kouassi. She is incredibly skilled. I think she did so much to make herself available, put the ball at the foot of her teammates, and she just looked like she was hungrier than everybody else. She played with more urgency, more intensity, and I think she had more drive to get the ball on target than anybody else on the team. She was just relentless. She's been such a good addition for the Spirit, and I still find it shocking that she has not scored. The math is just not mathing on this one because she's so good. And again, look at this, 86 minutes in, runs all the way back to retrieve this ball, and she is just gonna keep going. So when I said she's hungrier, this is what I mean. Like, she just wanted to win this, keeps the run up here, and then really frustrated when it doesn't work out, as she should be, fair enough. Second standout for me, I had to go with another strong Irish name in McEwen. She was matched up with Banda for most of the game, and she just looked good. She was getting to balls, clearing them pretty easily, helps out Morgan here. She just looked like incredibly comfortable, no stress in her game whatsoever, rising up to win headers. She's good everywhere. And even here, right, she's not really going to win this, but she does just enough to stay on Banda and force a bad pass. It was honestly astonishing. She played such a clean game. Here's another example where she's going to get beat a little bit, but I love a good recovery. I love good high effort. I love players that hate getting beat, and again, comes in and helps Morgan. So McEwen was a little bit of the safety blanket for Morgan back there. And another player that really wanted to win was Hal Hirschfeld. And I said the ball was in the air a lot, but Hirschfeld was one of the players that really put in the effort to get the ball under control for the Spirit. I think she must have pulled the ball out of the air more than any other player on that team. And it kind of makes sense. This is just what she does. She is absolutely fantastic on the counter press, really good at winning the ball back for her team. But it's the little details. Like, look at her position here. Never turns her hips, always makes sure she's available as an option, even when she knows it's not coming. She's just disciplined, really, really high on this player, and I cannot wait to see what she does next season. Both of these teams have excellent rosters, and as a neutral, I loved this match. It was a real opportunity to see some of the brightest stars of the sport in person. I had a great time in Kansas City. The stadium was incredible, but I really loved seeing how proud all the locals were of their team and their city. It was just a really, really nice moment. It was also really cool getting to meet a few of you that have been watching the videos. I love talking football, so it was just so cool to see this community starting to exist in person a little bit. It brought me a lot of joy, so thank you for that. Looking forward to next season. Looking forward to making more videos. We'll be there before you know it.